Welcome back to Hardball. President Obama heads to New York City tonight for a fundraiser with lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender supporters, as the state Senate in Albany may be getting closer to a vote on same-sex marriage. The president has said his views on gay marriage are evolving. Is that enough to shore up support from the LGBT community? Fred Sainz is a vice president at the Human Rights Campaign, and John Aravosis is editor of AMERICAblog. Welcome to both of you. Here's President Obama back in December explaining how his views on gay marriage are changing.
My feelings about this are constantly evolving. I struggle with this. I have friends, I have people who work for me, who are in powerful, strong, long-lasting gay or lesbian unions. And they are extraordinary people. And this is something that means a lot to them, and they care deeply about. At this point, what I've said is that my baseline is a strong civil union that provides them the protections and the legal rights that married couples have, and I think I think that's the right thing to do. But I recognize that from their perspective, it is not enough, and I think this is something that we're going to continue to debate, and I personally am going to continue to wrestle with going forward.
Fred, President Obama back in the 1990s apparently filled out a questionnaire in which he stated his support for marriage equality. I don't want to call it gay marriage anymore because there's no such thing. There's marriage, and the question is whether everybody gets to participate or not. So marriage equality. He supported it back in the 90s, but now he says his thinking is evolving. Is it evolving or devolving, though? He's now claiming he wants a states' rights position on this civil right. That's a little odd.
Well, Ron, I think the president has told us his position is evolving, and frankly, that is the case for much of the American public. It's our job as advocates to continue to push that conversation and this dialogue on this issue forward, but to be respectful of Americans where they're at. I think one of the reasons why the gay movement has been so successful is because we don't put barriers up when we continue to talk to Americans about important issues to gay equality. I know from my own personal experience that, the conversation that I had with my family about coming out was a very difficult one. I didn't speak to my father for an awful long time. So it is our inherent experience that you can't necessarily rush to demand wholesale change in the way in which people think about issues. Do we want the president to support marriage equality? To that, there is absolutely no doubt. Should we judge him based upon the entirety of his record as being not only the best president in the history of the United States on behalf of gay rights? Absolutely. He should be judged for the entirety of the way in which he's made this country a more just and equal society.
But Fred, there's a difference between demanding that people do something about marriage equality and simply stating unequivocally your position and your preference in the matter. And President Obama seems reluctant to do that.
Well, no. I mean, I think the position that he stated is one that he, like many Americans, fair-minded Americans, are struggling with this issue. And we do want him to evolve to a position one day in which he fully embraces marriage equality. Do we think that he should do so? Do we think that he should do so soon? Absolutely. But we view the glass as being really half full. This president has done so much in order to improve the lives of millions of gay Americans, and we think that he should be judged on the entirety of that record. But make no mistake about it, we believe that there should be marriage equality in this country. We think that it's the just and equal thing to do. In the short term, though, that right will come by achieving marriage equality in states like New York. It will come through state legislatures and governors doing the courageous thing and bringing marriage equality into place. It will come through an electoral strategy in which we bring marriage into places in states like Maine. And it will come through a judicial strategy in which cases are introduced that basically get rid of what we know to be discriminatory laws. But most importantly, it will come by continuing to change the hearts and minds of Americans. And I think that that's where the president is at. He has told us, like many fair-minded Americans have, that he is on a process of self-discovery, on an evolution in which he is struggling with this issue. And we know, not just as gay Americans, but as Americans in general, that people truly do evolve eventually to positions of supporting our full equality. And I think that's where the president is at right now.
All right. John, how do you feel about this? Because I'm a little confused about the whole evolution analogy here, because on the one hand, back in the 90s, he'd already evolved, and then he de-evolved, and now he's evolving, he's re-evolving now. How do you read this?
No, I mean, it's a problem, because actually there were not just one but two questionnaires in 1996 that the president filled out and said, I am for, same-sex marriage. I will defend it. And now, not now, back in 2004, he was saying, well, no, I'm not for same-sex marriage. Now he's saying, or marriage equality, now he's saying he's coming along and, evolving that way again. I think it's caused a conundrum for him, because people can tell he's playing politics. And for gay and lesbian people, he's playing politics with our lives and with our civil rights. I think his record has been okay to date. It has not been as overwhelming as Fred states. What we found is on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the president was willing to drag his feet, and they were going to wait until 2011, actually, to do the legislation, until the activists spoke up and said, no way. We're going to protest the White House. We're going to stand up at your speeches and yell at you, and they did. And it got the president's attention. Things finally moved at the last second before the Republicans took over the House. On marriage, we are not yet equal as a community. We're not yet equal as Americans. And to tell people, well, I'm basically playing political games with your right to get married, and someday I may come along. I think the president has a real problem tonight. He's going to New York, where this marriage debate is happening right now. We're talking in the next couple hours, we could know whether New York will or will not legalize marriage for gay couples. Right. And he's going to address it. We heard from the White House today, but he's not going to say he's for it. Well, I don't think people are going to accept this, cutting the baby in half.
A Gallup poll out this spring shows that views on gay marriage have reversed from last year. Americans favor legalizing marriage equality, let me say that, 53 to 45% now, versus the 53% who opposed marriage equality and 44% who supported it last year. John, as a tactical matter, is it defensible for the president to think and say to his advisors, look, if I get out front on this issue, any Republican who is willing to go along and do the right thing will instantly flip and come out in opposition to marriage equality simply because I'm now the face of marriage equality. Is there any sense in that reasoning?
I don't think so, because ironically what we've seen over the last several years has been Republicans almost running away from the gay rights issue. On Don't Ask, Don't Tell, sure, you had John McCain complaining, his usual self. But what we saw is the Republicans really didn't have the stomach to do a filibuster. And in the end, two Republicans ended up joining on and voting for Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, who we didn't even expect. It was sort of like, where did these guys come from? On marriage, you've already got Dick Cheney and a whole bunch of other Republicans who have said, they're really fine with gay marriage, basically. I think the president is in a good position. As you said, two recent polls show a majority of the public on his side, or on our side, I should say, in terms of favoring marriage equality. And overall, what we have found, what this administration has found politically, which is, I think, what's most important, is when they finally made movement on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and when they finally made small movement on the Defense of Marriage Act, another law we wanted repealed, all of a sudden they saw the floodgates open and gay money start to come back to them for the REAL Act. The gay community supposedly is the only community where this sort of spigot of fundraising has been turned back on because the president made steps in the right direction. So I would argue it's politically to his benefit with the public, but also with the gay community, to be a little more our fierce advocate, which he had promised.
Fred, how does this play out? Is the president going to pay any sort of price for, let's be honest, dragging his feet a bit on marriage equality, and pay any price within the gay community for that next year?
Well, I guess I would make two observations. The first is I think that it's important to understand that marriage is not the only priority to the gay community. Far from it. In 29 states in this country, you could still be fired for your sexual orientation, and in 36 states for your gender identity. There are still a number of issues that we have as priority. Our kids are still bullied. There's still an awful lot of work to be done. Change has always come first and foremost in the states for gay and lesbian people. people. Issues of equality have always been advanced. So in that sense, we will see when hopefully New York joins it, the 6th state today to have marriage equality, and then a number of states will also follow. At the federal level, let's also not forget that the so-called Defense of Marriage Act also has to be overturned. So I think that this president is tremendously popular among gay people for all of the hallmark changes, advancements that he has brought to our community. And I think they take him at his word when they understand him to be evolving, because it is their own personal experiences from their family and friends to continue a respectful dialogue. Should and can the president do more? Absolutely. And it's our jobs as advocates to continue pushing in that direction.
Right,
but I think we see the glasses being half full as opposed to half empty.
But
all right, hey, guys, okay, go ahead, John, real quick.
No, real quick, what I think you've learned with this president is, take him at his word, but trust but verify, as Ronald Reagan, Senior used to say. Meaning,
Doverai, no proverai, as he used to say.
I got to learn it in Russian. But the bottom line is, meaning that, yes, accept what the politician is telling you, but you better hold his feet to the fire, because if you simply say, hey, I trust this guy, he's going to do it, he's not going to do it. And I think President Obama has shown that time and again. Who does he listen to most? The Republicans and the conservative Democrats who hold his feet to the fire. And now it's been the gay community, because the activists did the same thing.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you, Fred Sainz and John Aravosis.